I would say that sustainability is not separate from value creation. It's central to it.
Scott Tu is the Vice President of Sustainability Strategy and Managing Director of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Sustainability at Trane Technologies, a global climate innovator focused on decarbonizing the built environment through sustainable heating, cooling, and energy solutions.
The decision makers are so disconnected that we can't just wait on decision makers, meaning like building owners, for instance. We can't just wait on them. We now have an example across all building types, no matter how small, how large, or even what economy or country they're in. They're now great examples for how we can make the space that you're in better for the environment, better for your comfort, and better for your pocketbook. You know, most of the buildings with us today will still be with us in 2050. Many will still be with us in 2070. And the best buildings of the future are going to combine some really strong design fundamentals, but they're also going to combine that with some really smart systems that will protect people as conditions change globally. Yeah, well, you know, for companies that make things, who manufacture things, this concept of circularity, it really is about how do we create a circle with these products? You know, we use raw materials to make products that we sell into the economy, but I think we were thinking about it the wrong way. I think in the past, we were only thinking about it in terms of how do we identify and reduce the waste that's associated with making the products. But I think if we flip that, I think we should see circularity as an innovation opportunity.
Rising energy prices, supply chain disruptions, industrial policy shifts. How have some of these challenges changed or influenced the way Trane Technologies thinks about resilience and sustainability today?
And that reminded me of one word that you don't like, which is adaptation.
I've always thought of adaptation as almost like it's acknowledging that we're giving up and we're just going to take whatever comes our way.
Welcome everybody to yet another episode of the Sustainability and Climate Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Labake Richard, and I have with me Tobi. Hi, Tobi.
Hi, Labake. Hi, again. Labake is standing as soon as I just woke up from sleep. Like, hello, everyone. Welcome. But anyways, welcome, guys, to yet another episode of the Sustainability and Climate Podcast. You know, as I always do, I bring the energy, I bring the vibe. And as usual, no leave, no transfer. The one and only Labake Ajiboye Richard. Hi, Labake. How you doing? How does that sound to you?
It sounds a lot more energetic, I'll give you that.
Exactly.
Well done. We already know that you have the energy, so we can let you have that. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I am well. I'm excited. We're well into the summer now, experiencing all the summer effects, both here in London with the heat waves, in Nigeria with the flooding. So it's been good. It's been good. How about you?
Yeah, I've been seeing the news about the flooding in Lagos. I think it's a repeated cycle. Every year we see the same news. We see the same news of flooding, in Lagos. And I don't know what's the cause and why the government is not acting on it. But I guess since Labake is in Lagos, you should tell us the reason why there's a consistent flooding in Lagos. Why the governments are not doing something about it.
I think the biggest reason we all need to understand is climate change. The volume of rainfall is increasing on a year-by-year basis. Yeah. And that is the start of all the conversations around it. Same thing with, Europe and the heat waves, right? It is consistently changing over the years. So last year, we definitely had heat waves in London, but the heat waves are becoming longer and hotter. And that's just what's going to keep happening, right? And same thing with the flooding in Nigeria. The volume of rain is increasing. Now, there are a lot of structural and infrastructural challenges that make the floodings worse, that make the experience worse, which we definitely need to address. And we're very happy to have some government officials and policy people on the podcast to come and talk about some of the challenges that they've had in addressing these issues. And how we as constituents can do better to improve the experience of, the city. Because I will be the first to point out that, drainage is a huge challenge in why, there's consistent floods, how people interact with their environment. So like loitering and littering, dumping stuff outside definitely clogs the drainage pathways. and gutters. So that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. So there's a number of contributing factors that I think we need to kind of discuss as a society. Uh, and a number of infrastructural kind of interventions that we need to see the government take. But the biggest thing that we need to think about, more long-term solution, is improving our environmental impacts, because they are increasing the volume of rain that we are seeing at any consistent period of time, right? So yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to pull out a number because I saw something yesterday about the number of people that have died from the heat wave between May and June in the UK. I think it's about 270 people.
Yeah.
And to just let you know the effect. And I think I saw, I was sharing to someone like I didn't know it was like, I was not even expecting more than 10, to be honest. And to see that huge amount of number, that shows that
In continental Europe, it's in the thousands.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think talking about what government is doing, I think I remember seeing one of our previous guests, Mudra, who used to work for the Lagos state government, now lead like an environmental team for a local government in Nigeria as well. And I also see people complain about the drainage system most especially in Lagos. In as much as the government is trying to enlighten the people in order not to put their waste in through the drainage. You see a lot of people still doing that, and I think they have to even create a task force to make sure that they arrest or prosecute people who continue to build their houses on top of the drainage system or throw their waste in the drainage system. I just wish that things can be done, but it's just so sad to see. I was that particular number when I saw it, to be honest, I was shocked. Like I was not expecting each week to give about 270 people just in the UK alone. It's heartbreaking, to be honest.
Yeah, and it also brings to mind the fact that the heat wave is not just us complaining that it's hot. It's like a real medical challenge for people. Dehydration, and there's also, I think the metric I saw about the thousands death, I think it was 2,000 in Europe. I don't remember if it was just May and June, or if it was like over a like spring, summer. But it was talking about heat wave related deaths, right? So it's not just, what you would imagine of like dehydration, but it could also mean, is it somehow affecting people that are already immunocompromised in a way that it wouldn't if it wasn't as hot, stuff like that. So it's really interesting to think about how weather patterns are changing and what that means for like economic productivity, what that means. Schools are out, because of the heat wave. Businesses are work from home because of the heat wave. Productivity changes for people that work outside, so like farmers, construction workers, stuff like that. So it's a really interesting conversation.
Hopefully actions will continue to be taken by the right authorities. We have the beneficial effects and make sure that we address the real concerns about this.
Yeah, but that being said, we have a very exciting conversation with our guests on the podcast today. And you'd want to stay tuned and see this one.
Scott Tu is the Vice President of Sustainability Strategy and Managing Director of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Sustainability at Trane Technologies, a global climate innovator focused on decarbonizing the built environment through sustainable heating, cooling, and energy solutions. Under his leadership, Trane Technologies launched one of the most ambitious customer-facing climate commitments in the private sector, the Gigaton Challenge, an initiative to help customers reduce 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Scott has also been a pioneer in advancing integrated reporting and has consistently championed the idea that sustainability should be embedded into business strategy, innovation, public policy, and long-term value creation. His work bridges climate science, industrial innovation, economics, and policy, offering a unique perspective on how businesses can drive meaningful transformation while remaining competitive. Today, we explore why energy efficiency may be the world's most undervalued climate solution, how industrial innovation is reshaping the built environment, and what the next generation of corporate sustainability leadership will require. Scott, welcome to the Sustainability and Climate Podcast.
Welcome back to the Sustainability and Climate Podcast. As we said, we have a very incredible guest, Scott, on the podcast with us today. So I wanted to jump in with our very first question. The built environment accounts for about 40% of global energy-related emissions, but much of the climate conversation continues to focus on electricity generation and transport. Why would you say that buildings remain one of the most overlooked opportunities in the energy transition?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for this opportunity to talk about some things that I spend my days thinking about, and it's great to be with you. The question about why do you think that we overlook buildings? I think we overlook them because buildings are a part of everyday life. We live in, we have living spaces. We have spaces where we work. We have spaces where we play. Schools, hospitals. They're part of our everyday life, and I just think that people always see them. They don't always see them as a major climate lever, and so they get overlooked. And the flip side of that, though, is that buildings consume a huge amount of energy across the world economy. And they also, because of that, offer the biggest opportunity for us to cut emissions quickly. And I think that the challenge with buildings in particular is that they're so fragmented. I just mentioned hospitals. I mentioned homes. I mentioned places that we work. Just the types of buildings that may have come into your viewers' heads right then, as I mentioned, different building types. Each of those building types also has a different decision maker. And so as a unit, as buildings, as a big opportunity, the decision makers are also very disconnected from each other. So the opportunity for better buildings, to reduce carbon, to lower energy costs, to improve comfort at the same time is a huge opportunity, but we have to actually all get on the same page and align on what's needed for us to make it happen.
That's a great point.
Yeah, very great point. Again, I'm great follow-up to that because I saw something I've changed now in Paris this year. You said something that a lot of people said stuck with them, where you said that the challenge is no longer about the invention. It's about deployment. It's about the workforce capability and the speed. And again, I find that very striking from someone who is inside the industry itself, right? If the technology already exists and the bottleneck is deployment, whose job is it to close that gap? Do you think it's the government? Do you think it's the customers? Whose job do you think?
Oh, I think everybody has a role to play. That's why I mentioned that with the decision makers are so disconnected that we can't just wait on decision makers, meaning like building owners, for instance. We can't just wait on them. I think that we have to continue what we're doing here today. We have to continue talking about the opportunity. And the opportunities are great. If you're a building owner, I can just talk to you about the opportunity to save you money by helping your building, your home, the place you work, become more efficient. That's a bottom line impact to your pocket. I could also talk to you, if you care about adding to that, about how we can not only save you money by reducing the energy, we can also help the building become smarter. We've talked about smarter buildings for a long time now. And I think that the promise of smart buildings, never before have we been as close to the promise of smart buildings as we are now, because we have controls, we have automation for buildings, no matter how small or how large, that can, number one, make the buildings more efficient. They can also automate some things that need to be automated, like how the systems inside the building are operating, maybe to signal that something needs to better maintenance, maybe to signal that something is being wasted, some energy or some resources being wasted. We've not had the level of automation in the past that we have today. Therefore, building owners now have an opportunity to understand and better manage the building that they're in. And then last but not least, I think that, the proof is in seeing it happen. We also now have better case studies than ever before. If you need an example of a building that can be operated better, we now have an example across all building types, no matter how small, how large, or even what economy or country they're in. They're now great examples for how we can make the space that you're in better for the environment, better for your comfort, and better for your pocketbook.
And I saw that one of the organization's most distinctive commitments is the Gigaton Challenge, right? Where you're basically helping customers reduce 1 gigaton of carbon emission rather than focusing solely on their own footprint. What prompted the organization to shift from asking to all how do we reduce our emission to how do we maximize our climate impact?
Look, our biggest opportunity is going to be making sure that the systems that we put in buildings in the future is better than what's in the building currently. And so reducing our own footprint is important, of course. We need to make our company more efficient. We need to make our company reduce our own carbon as we manufacture products. But the far greater opportunity for us is helping customers reduce their footprint through efficient systems, through low emission technologies, through better refrigerants that help cool the building, and through better building performance. I mean, the Gigaton Challenge from the very first day that we announced it was a simple idea. And the idea was this: if you want to lead on climate, you have to scale the impact way beyond your current company's operations. And I know that in some circles, maybe with some of your listeners who are in the sustainability space, we're still thinking way too small about our impact. We have to think outside of the box. And for us, outside of the box means that we have to think beyond just how we manufacture systems. We have to think about what happens when those systems are placed into buildings around the world and when they're plugged into a grid. And so if you can expand your thinking that way, then it helps you be a better company in terms of innovating what's possible, in terms of challenging what you were doing in the past. We call it boldly challenging who we were in the past and thinking about what the future can be. And the Gigaton Challenge was always about taking those insights and making what we provide to the world better.
And I really love that, because I also saw something where you said you wanted the 45,000 employees at your organization to be called a sustainability evangelist. Because I think for that to work, it has to be something that must be bought internally before taking it outside. So I think that's a good step and an approach to take.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I was going to shift gears a little bit and think about what's happening geopolitically. We have a lot happening: rising energy prices, supply chain disruptions, industrial policy shifts. And so I'm curious, how have some of these challenges changed or influenced the way Trane Technologies thinks about resilience and sustainability today?
Yeah, it's a really fair question given the uncertainties that we all are facing right now, geopolitical. But I think even if we look back 5 years ago when the world was managing through a pandemic, what I think that all of these global challenges have made clear is that resilience and sustainability go hand in hand. I mean, efficiency is no longer just about emissions. It's also about security. It's about cost controls. It's about operational cost and how do we make sure that our operations can be more stable. So today, I don't think sustainability is some kind of side strategy, something we do when we've done everything else. It's really a core part of what how businesses should be operating. When we think about buildings, I think in particular about can sustainability play a role in helping buildings be better than they were in the past? And the answer to that is absolutely. If nothing else, the way that we are thinking about not just designing new buildings, but how we retrofit existing buildings, we can help them be more resilient in the face of uncertainties, whether it's supply chain uncertainties, whether it's energy uncertainties in your local economy, or whether it's the changing nature of how comfort happens inside of a building for its occupants. In a world with lots of challenges, I think what we're all looking for is some certainty and some stability. And I think that sustainability is the answer to that. So that would be my view on how do we manage through all these challenges? The way we manage through all these challenges is that we work on the things that help us become more resilient.
And that reminded me of one word that you don't like, which is adaptation.
Yes.
Because I remember you mentioned resilient. That you prefer.
Did you say you don't like that word?
No, you said you don't like it. So I remember.
Yes, that's correct.
You said resilience. I was like, okay, yeah, I remember seeing it that you mentioned that you don't like, because again, like to me, it makes sense, because if you use the word resilience, it means that we are preparing ahead of time rather than us just giving up to say, yeah, okay, we have to adapt to the current
Exactly.
situation.
I've always thought of adaptation as almost like it's acknowledging that we're giving up and we're just gonna take whatever comes our way. But I don't think resiliency is that at all. I think resiliency is you stepping back and saying, hey, how can I make where I'm going in the future better? And it becomes something you own as opposed to just something you take.
That's true. And
Great view.
And to the next question, you see, much of the climate conversation focuses on carbon emission, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the resources used, the refrigerant, and the product life cycles, they are becoming very important these days. How is the organization thinking about circularity as a driver of innovation rather than simply a waste management strategy?
Yeah, well, for companies that make things, who manufacture things, this concept of circularity, and I know maybe the concept's not completely apparent to all of your viewers, but it really is about how do we create a circle with these products? We use raw materials to make products that we sell into the economy. For us, it's systems that get placed into buildings, and sometimes they're placed into those buildings for 2 decades, maybe more, a long time. And so for companies like ours that make things, I think circularity has always been a concept, but I think we were thinking about it the wrong way. I think in the past, we were only thinking about it in terms of how do we identify and reduce the waste that's associated with making the products. But I think if we flip that, I think we should see circularity as an innovation opportunity. It should be about innovation. It needs to start with better design. How do you make products last longer? How do you help service those systems over time so that they continue to last longer? How do you make responsible decisions on things like refrigerants for us? Every company has something they can focus on that makes that product more responsible for environmental impacts. And then how do we just get smarter about using materials? Like we still, for instance, use some materials and raw materials that are virgin, meaning we dug them up from the earth. But we are working really hard on moving away from that. And first, we have to identify enough material that's recycled in the marketplace for us to incorporate into our products. And so we have teams working on that now. But I call that the smarter use of materials. I mean, if you do this well, circularity is going to be the answer for reducing resource use. It also will create more value for customers over time. It is a true it's a true change in how you think about products from the very beginning of the concept to what happens at the end of their life. Maybe they don't have an end of life. We're exploring some product take back now on systems that are 20 and 30 years old, and we're taking those systems apart, trying to identify where's the value here, what can be recycled, what can be reused, can it have a different life in another way? We're asking all those questions, and what it's creating is this whole innovation ecosystem where people that have never had to think about these things before are all at the table thinking about how do we do this differently in the future, and it's going to provide some great innovations for customers going forward.
Love that. I also wanted to pick on something you'd said. You've spoken about intelligent buildings already in this conversation, and historically, building efficiency has always meant better insulation, more efficient HVAC systems. But today we're thinking about intelligent buildings. We're thinking about how AI can optimize some of these buildings, predictive maintenance, etc. How do you think industrial innovation fundamentally changes what high performance buildings look like over the next decade?
Yeah, I think in the past we thought of high performance. We thought in terms of high performance standards means just efficient equipment, but that's not how we're thinking about it anymore. In the future, a high performance building, for instance, will be an adaptive building. It'll be more than just intelligent. It will actually adapt to what's happening in its own local environment, meaning it will adapt to the energy flow that's coming into the building. It will adapt to the weather that's happening around the building outside. It will also begin to predict its own maintenance. So the building itself, the systems inside the building, will use connected controls to begin to predict maintenance needs and optimize itself in real time. These are not just concepts that I'm speaking about right now with you as something that will be in the future. We're doing this today. We use technologies like BrainBox, where we integrate that into the building's connected control systems, and the building then can begin predicting what's needed to help it operate more efficiently, to help it run better. It can actually signal in real time a need and actually send signals outside the building to those who can come and service the building. I mean, the future building will be responsive in real time. It will be more efficient. And back to our previous comments and discussion, I think it will become more resilient. It actually will help make itself adapt to a more resilient environment for the occupants of the building. I'm excited about this because in the past, it was something that we had a concept about, that we had a dream about, if you will, but today we're actually watching it happen. And so the future is right now.
The future is now.
Follow up to that. I read something where Trane Technologies in partnership with Brainbox AI.
Yes.
Because of that partnership, we've covered more than 16,000 buildings running AI-driven optimization and a real-world data set. What specific pattern have you noticed during this period that has surprised you, that you think that an engineer would have like guessed from the word go?
Yeah. I think I can't answer all those details, but we have incorporated Brainbox, as I've mentioned. And I think probably the learning is that real-time impacts. In the past, we would have modeled things based on a sort of large model data set of a certain building type, and that was okay. That was good. But what if you actually can have something very specific about a particular building in real time with the real weather outside the building that the AI agent knows about, which has a tremendous impact on the comfort inside the building? And what if that particular building can make its own particular adjustments based on its own particular data, not some modeled thing about an area with a lot of assumptions, but real data? What we're seeing is that you check all the boxes, everything, it's a win for everyone. It's better for the occupants in terms of comfort. It's better for the local supply grid because it gets real time. There's a real time data exchange, so the energy flow happens better. And efficiencies, we're seeing efficiencies of up to 15% just by adding Brainbox to an existing building controls. That's before we actually tweak and upgrade equipment. So the potential is significant, and I think we're just scratching the surface on where this is taking us.
My next question is: if you have the power, let's say you have the power, right, to change exactly one piece of energy policy globally, something that would do more to accelerate building decarbonization than anything else on the table right now, what would it be, and why has no government fully committed to it yet?
I love questions about policy. It's something maybe in today's environments and challenges we don't want to talk about a lot, but we've seen when they work really well. And so my answer there, I think the most effective policies create market signals. If you think about things like incentives, if you think about building codes, if you think about performance standards, meaning here's a standard that you have to perform up to, that's the baseline, you have to do that. The best policies create those types of signals. And I think that raises the bar for all that are in the marketplace. That's what helps businesses invest the right way with confidence. That's where governments, I think, can help us make huge leaps towards improvements. Where governments still fall short often is in consistency and implementation. Sometimes without the right market signals, we see this sort of patchwork a thing happen where you have great examples in one area and then you're still lagging in another. And what we need is going to be speed and scale. And that's what's lagging often. And I think that the best policies help both scale. We do things in a much bigger way. And we also need speed, meaning we need deadlines and timeframes that are meaningful so that we can actually realize all the potential that we know is out there right now.
I think that makes sense, because that reminds me of the roundtable that you were part of with Sean Kelly and Paul Kenny, where you shared the same thing, and you talked about Europe taking the lead in this kind of innovation. So I think this is something that, for someone who is based in Europe, I think it's something that is very important at this time.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we want to talk about heat waves a little bit, which we had a mini conversation earlier on, temperatures are consistently rising. How can buildings think a little bit more about consuming less energy while also protecting people from extreme heat? How should architects, engineers, technology companies rethink some of the designs around buildings for a future where resilience is even just as important as efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned that we've all been experiencing these extreme heat events in the past, even in the recent past. Extreme heat events were typically hours or days long. They were not what we're seeing now. We're seeing these extreme heat events last longer, and they recur much more often. And really, as we've talked about in other venues, I mean, we need to design buildings not just for efficiency anymore. In the past, we really focused on designing them either for aesthetics or efficiency. And today we have to design them obviously for those things, but they also have to be designed for real world stress. And that means we have to think more about extreme heat, as I just mentioned. We have to think about grid disruptions. We have to think about the occupants and occupant health. We also have to think about long-term performance. Buildings are built to stand for a long time. I mean, most of the buildings with us today will still be with us in 2050. Many will still be with us in 2070. And the best buildings of the future are going to combine some really strong design fundamentals, but they're also going to combine that with some really smart systems that will protect people as conditions change globally. This is not something that we're only seeing in Africa or in London or in New York City. We're seeing the shifts, the conditions shift fundamentally globally. And so we have to stop designing buildings with one group over here, designing for a certain reason, and then placing into place systems inside buildings that are not connected with the overall objective in the place. And the overall objective really needs to be stress tested against what's happening as conditions change globally. And so some of the fundamentals are going to have to change in the future.
I agree with stress testing for real world issues.
So to our last and final question, which is always about you advising, be a CEO or a global leader or a government. Because one thing we've come to understand is that most CEOs, they still treat sustainability as a cost center rather than a source of advantage to be used even now. If you had 5 minutes along with a newly appointed CEO, knowing fully well that one, you spent over 15 years in a formal sustainability role and almost 2 decades at Trane. Because I was telling Labake earlier that, like, reading your profile, I find it very, very strange or interesting when I see people spend huge number of years at one organization, and I really want to know how they do it. What is that one thing you would tell that CEO that will leave the room holding?
I would say that sustainability is not separate from value creation. It's central to it. I think that sustainability, and we have to see, a CEO has to see sustainability as a driver of growth, a driver of innovation, and a driver of competitive advantage. These are things that CEOs care about. They care about growth. They care about being innovative, and they care about having advantage against competition. Companies that lead in the future are going to be the ones that understand that sustainability shapes markets. It shapes and helps meet customer expectations. And it absolutely is a strategy that's a winner in the marketplace. And so if you care about value creation, sustainability is central to how we create value. That would be where the mindset shift that's needed by CEOs that might treat sustainability as a separate initiative. It's no longer acceptable to treat it as a side job or as a separate initiative. It has to be part of how the company grows, how the company innovates, and how we create competitive advantages. I've seen it with my own eyes. You mentioned, why have I stuck around in one organization for so long? It's because we've really tried hard to integrate sustainability and the principles within the business and how we do business, meaning how we make ourselves better at manufacturing and making products, how we engage our people, how leaders think about value creation, how we put it inside of our strategy so that we create competitive advantage. And so when you've seen it like I have up close and personal, not only do you believe it, but you can really be confident as you explain to others that may be missing it, that they have to step back and look at this differently and integrate it in ways that truly can be meaningful. No matter the industry, It can beyond just manufacturing HVAC systems like we do. That should be applied across all markets and in all companies, small, medium, and large. You got the answer that I'm always most bullish on, and so that one I certainly believe if you took me out today and plugged me in anywhere else, I think you'd get the same answer from me because I've watched it happen, and I'm the biggest believer in the true value of it.
That's awesome.
All right, so I want to go to Labake before I do my favorite thing on the podcast.
Yes, so that's how I was looking at him, because Toby likes to do something that he calls giving our guests their flowers, and talk through some of the work that you've done in the space. So I'll let him do that. But before that, I just wanted to say thank you for your generous knowledge over the course of the questions. And I'll let Toby really quickly give you his flowers before we round up.
All right, thank you so much about it. Yes, so one thing that we've adopted on this podcast is we give our guests their flowers. And before we let you go, I want to say something. We grew up on a small family farm in South Alabama.
Yes.
Where if something broke, you fixed it. If something was used, you reused it. And if something was wasted, that waste cost your family something real. And I think that's genuinely where this all started. And nearly 40 years later, that same instinct, the instinct that nothing should be thrown away without a fight, is now shaping how buildings are designed on 6 continents. You've spent over 15 years in this work family, and by your own account, 2 decades at one company, in a field that was still finding its footing when you started in it. You co-founded the Center for Energy Efficiency and Sustainability before most companies had a sustainability department at all. You built the Gigaton Challenge, the largest customer-facing climate commitment in your industry. You made Trane Technologies the first in the sector to have its climate targets independently validated. Twice now, the Independent has named you to its Climate 100 list, alongside people working across science, politics, philanthropy, and business to solve, in their words, the planet's greatest. Your own Chief Technology and Sustainability Officer, Maura Tala, said it plainly, and she said, and I quote, "Your leadership has been instrumental in driving the company's most ambitious climate goals and in helping an entire ecosystem of customers and partners actually achieve them, not just announce." See, Trane Technologies received the inaugural Terracotta Seal for Sustainability Leadership presented under the authority of His Majesty King Charles III, which is a mark given only to those judged to be genuinely building a sustainable future rather than simply talking about. You see, that is not a small thing. That is a king recognizing the same instinct a boy on an Alabama farm learned before he ever had a name for it. Scott, what you've built is a proof that where you start does not decide where you end up, but it does decide who you become on the way. You took a childhood lesson about not wasting anything and turned it into a global discipline for how the built world uses energy. To me, I see that as a legacy most people spend a lifetime chasing and they never catch, but you're still building it. And so I want to say thank you, Scott, for the work that you do, for the honesty that you brought on the podcast today, and for staying close to where you came from, even as the stage got bigger. And I want to say on behalf of the many listeners who listen to our podcast, thank you for the work that you do. And as a Christian that I am, I will say that I pray you continue to find the strength to continue to pursue and to do the work that you do. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your encouraging words and your prayers. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And with that, we'll close the episode for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Take care.